We continue our Tafsir lesson today, and we will commence with the greatest ayah in the Quran, which is Ayatul Kursi. In the previous lesson, we began with Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the Kitab, the foundation of the book. It comprises all of the meanings that we find in the Quran as a whole, and it is the opening of the Quran. And so today we will look at the greatest ayah in the Quran, and in the lessons to come, inshallah ta'ala, we will look at the surahs at the end of the Quran, the Mu'awwadhatayn, Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Kafirun. And all of these verses, they are centered around the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His names and His attributes and His right to be worshipped alone. And all of that is the foundation of a Muslim's belief. It is the foundation of all rectification upon this earth. And from this, we see the stark difference, the huge difference between the people who follow the way and the methodology of the prophets in rectifying the servants, in rectifying the land, in that their focus is around the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and rooting it into the hearts of the Muslims. And that's why Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he mentions often in a number of his works that every rectification on this earth, its basis is the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obedience to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And every corruption and harm upon this earth, then its foundation is calling upon other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obeying other than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so therefore this ayah, which is the greatest ayah in the Quran, when we look at this ayah and when we go through the brief comments that Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala he makes, and he alludes to certain principles and alludes to certain meanings in a very brief and concise way, then this will help us to understand the significance of this ayah in the life of a Muslim and in the daily practice of a Muslim. So Ayatul Kursi, if we want to study Ayatul Kursi, Ayatul Kursi, we can say, has 10 sentences. There are 10 sentences in Ayatul Kursi. So if you wanted to systematically study this ayah and make it easy to memorize and recall all of the points and the lessons and the principles, Ayatul Kursi can be divided into 10 sentences. And we find that in this ayah, we find the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His right to be worshipped alone, the greatest of His names. We find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala denies certain imperfections which a person might presume about Him in his ignorance. We find the all-encompassing knowledge, the ilm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find a mention of His kursi, which alludes to His arsh, which alludes to His ulu, His greatness and His aboveness. All of these things we find are mentioned in this ayah. So the ayah begins, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. Allah, there is none which has the right to be worshipped besides Him. He is al-hayy, al-qayyum. So Allahu la ilaha illa hu, this is the first part. This is the first part of Ayatul Kursi. Al-hayyul qayyum, this is section number 2, or sentence number 2. So Imam al-Sa'di, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Akhbara sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he's referring to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that he informed us, أن هذه الآية أعظم آيات القرآن. أعظم آيات القرآن. That the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he informed us that this is the greatest verse, greatest of the verses of the Quran. لما احتوت عليه من معاني التوحيد والعظمة وسعة الصفات للباري تعالى. And this is because this ayah, it is the greatest ayah in the Quran because of what it contains, what it comprises of the meanings of at-Tawheed, the meanings of at-Tawheed, and of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of the vastness of His attributes, which belong to the Maker, Al-Bari, the Most High. فَأَخْبَرَ أَنَّهُ اللَّهُ. So He informed us in this ayah, in Ayatul Kursi, that He is Allah. This is the name of the Creator and the Maker. الَّذِي لَهُ جَمِيعُ مَعَانِي الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ. So He is the one to whom belong all of the meanings of uluhiyyah. وَأَنَّهُ لَا يَسْتَحِقُّ الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ وَالْعُبُودِيَّةِ إِلَّا هُ. So here He mentioned the name Allah, and the name Allah, as we find mentioned by the scholars, this is at the same time, it is the name of Allah, but it is also an indication to all of the other names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So this name Allah indicates every other name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we say Allah, that incorporates all of the other names, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Malik, Al-Quddus, As-Salam, Al-Mu'min, and so on and so forth. So when we say Allah, it indicates every other name. However, when we mention any other name, for example, we say Ar-Rahim, Al-Aziz, then it doesn't work the other way around. It does not indicate all of the other names. Rather, that name only comprises its own meaning. Whereas the name Allah, when we say Allah, it indicates every other name of Allah and every other attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which shows the greatness of this name. And that's why He said, الَّذِي لَهُ جَمِيعُ مَعَانِي الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ. That He, Allah, this name, it brings together all of the meanings of uluhiyyah. Uluhiyyah meaning Allah's right to be worshipped. Allah deserves to be worshipped. And when we look at all of His names, Allah is deserving to be worshipped because He is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Malik, Al-Quddus, As-Salam, Al-Mu'min, Al-Muhaymin, Al-Aziz, Al-Jabbar, Al-Mutakabbir, and so on and so forth. All of this indicates the uluhiyyah, the meanings of uluhiyyah. And then He said, وَأَنَّهُ لَا يَسْتَحِقُّ الْأُلُوهِيَّةَ وَالْعُبُودِيَّةَ إِلَّا هُ. And that there is none which deserves the right to be worshipped except Him. This is an indication of the statement, لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ. So Allah, then لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ. Here now, this is the meaning of Tawheed. Only He has the right to be worshipped. So worshipping anyone else, the uluhiyyah, فَأُلُوهِيَّةُ غَيْرِهِ وَعِبَادَةُ غَيْرِهِ بَاطِلَةٌ. The worship of anyone else or anything else is futile, is baseless and false. And so this here, we find that this is the da'wah of every single prophet and every single messenger that came to call to the worship of Allah alone, and invalidating and falsifying and showing that it is futile to worship anything besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created mankind upon this fitrah. This is how He created them. And He sent the messengers in order to protect their fitrah and to complete and perfect their fitrah. And so He sent messengers, and He sent with them the shara'i, the legislations by which this fitrah is completed and perfected, and so on. Then after this, after establishing the name of Allah, Allah, which indicates every other name, and the kalima, La ilaha illallah, He then said He is Al-Hayy, الحي وأنه الحي الذي له جميع معاني الحياة الكاملة. Al-Hayy is a name which comprises all of those meanings that represent a perfect life, life which is absolutely perfect. For example, من السمع والبصر والقدرة والإرادة وغيرها والصفات الذاتية. So he said, for example, attributes such as hearing and seeing and having power and having a will or a wish, al-irada, and other such attributes. When we say that Allah is living, it indicates all of these attributes. One who is living must have knowledge, ilm, must have hearing, must have seeing, must have irada, must have a wish, must have qudra. All of these things we understand. Now in the Quran, we understand these attributes because Allah has informed us in the Quran. Allah is As-Sami', Al-Basir, Al-Alim. We know that Allah is Fa'alun lima yurid, that He does whatever He wishes. He has an irada, He has ilm. And so we understand from the text that Allah has these attributes. And likewise, there are some attributes which by pure reason we can understand Allah has those attributes as well, through reason. But reason can only tell us a limited amount, a very limited amount of ilm about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so here is a principle from which we can see the misguidance of numerous groups who made reason to be the foundation of what Allah can and cannot be described with. As an example, the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila and the Ash'ariyya and the Maturidiyya and the Kullabiyya, the later ones amongst them from the Ahlul Kalam, they said Allah has 7 attributes. They said Allah has 7 attributes. And they said this on the basis, they reasoned that first of all we know that Allah must be living. If Allah is living and He has the attribute of Al-Hayat, then that means that He must have those attributes which life requires. And all of this is through reason. They are deriving this through reason. So a living being must have ilm, must have knowledge. He must have irada. He must have ilm, must have knowledge. He must have kalam, must have speech, must have hearing and seeing. And so they go to the end of the qudra and the power, so they bring the 7 attributes. And then they say that because reason proves to us that Allah must have these attributes, then every other attribute that we find mentioned in the Quran or in the Sunnah, then this has to submit to our reason. Our reason must find a way to accept it. If our reason doesn't accept it, then it is not an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, this is a mistake on their behalf, and the basis upon which we affirm attributes for Allah is that if He mentioned a name, or if He mentioned an attribute in the Quran, or if the Messenger mentioned a name, or the Messenger mentioned an attribute, we believe in that attribute. So here, the name Al-Hayy represents or indicates all of those other names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which are connected to a perfect life. So from them that we see in the revelation is As-Sami', all hearing, Al-Basir, all seeing, the one who has ilm, Al-Alim, the one who is Al-Qadir, and so on and so forth. And then he said, after this he said, وَالصِّفَاتْ الذَّاتِيَّةِ وَالصِّفَاتْ الذَّاتِيَّةِ, which are those attributes which His essence is described with. The essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an essence, meaning His existence is true and real. It is true and real. He exists outside of this creation, above the 7 heavens, and He has an essence, an actual existence. whose reality we do not know. We do not know how Allah exists. It is unlike anything that we see. And so from here, an important point that we should make, which is relevant in our times, is that you see there are many ignorant people, and in this time when we see that the ability to communicate and to discuss and to argue and to have debates and to record these things and to broadcast them to the world, all of this has become very, very easy. You see there are many ignorant people who are present today, and in the name of da'wah and in the name of da'wah organizations, they go out and they debate with non-Muslims and atheists, and they do so upon jahl, and they speak about Allah without knowledge and upon ignorance, and they utter lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from those things that you will see many of these ignorant people saying is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He created this creation, and in this creation, because He created time, and because He created space, and because He created matter, then it means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, they say, immaterial. And then they say that Allah is immaterial, He's outside of time, and they use all of these terms and phrases which are really philosophical terms and phrases. You find that these are things which are mentioned by the deviant astray philosophers like Aristotle and the Jews and the Christians who were affected by them, and the people of Kalam says He's immaterial, He is spaceless, He is timeless. And this, my dear brothers and sisters, is the bid'ah of Jahm bin Safwan. This is the bid'ah which Jahm bin Safwan, he brought into this ummah in the 2nd century of Islam. And through this, he brought great and utter misguidance into the Muslimin. And so these people present today, you will find them ascribing to the Sunnah. You will find them dressed as if, they are people of the Sunnah. And they make it appear to the people that they are calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the danger in this is that, of course, naturally, someone who believes in a creator, he will have arguments which are sound and reasonable. But within those arguments, there is the poison. The poison, because you've affirmed a creator by what appear to be sound arguments, then you describe the creator in such a way that actually indicates his non-existence. So which argument is this? That you argue to prove his existence, then when you describe him, he doesn't actually exist. Spaceless, immaterial, timeless. These are all ambiguous words, dubious words that we do not use. But these words, when you think about them, they actually mean that Allah does not have an existence outside of the mind. Allah doesn't have any attributes. Allah doesn't have any actions. Because if He had actions, it would mean that He is within time. Because if He acts, then actions come to be after they never came to be. This is now succession in time. Now Allah is encompassed by time, right? So this is the futility of what these people are doing, and they are saying in the way that they're arguing. So we believe, as the Shaykh said here, we believe in all of these attributes, and we believe in His sifat dhatiyya, that He has attributes that belong to His essence. So this is Al-Hayy. Al-Hayy indicates all of those attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those names that represent a perfect life. Perfect life. Then he said, Al-Qayyum. Al-Qayyum kama anna Al-Qayyum تدخل فيه جميع صفات الأفعال لأنه القيوم الذي قام بنفسه واستغنى عن جميع مخلوقاته وقام بجميع الموجودات فأوجدها وأبقاها وأمدها بجميع ما تحتاج إليه في وجودها وبقائها. So this long sentence, he says, and then He is also Al-Qayyum. Al-Qayyum, what enters into Al-Qayyum? Al-Qayyum, we find that all of those attributes which are related to Allah's actions, the attributes that relate to Allah's actions, All of those enter into the name Al-Qayyum. Why? Because He is Al-Qayyum, the one who maintains, the one who exists by Himself. Al-Qayyum means the one who exists, the one whose existence is by His own self. He does not exist on account of anything besides Him. He is self-subsisting. He exists by His own right, and He is not in need of anything else besides Him for His existence to be maintained. This is unlike everything besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The heavens, the earth, the creatures, ourselves, we cannot exist by our own right. We need air, we need food, we need drink. All of that is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot exist by our own right. It is impossible. Only Allah is the one who exists by His own right. So He is Al-Qayyum. This is one meaning. And also the other meaning is that everything besides Him, the existence of everything besides Him itself depends on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah is the creator. He is Al-Khaliq, Al-Khallaq, the merciful creator. He is Al-Razzaq, the provider. He is Al-Muhyi, the one who gives life. He is Al-Mumit, the one who takes life. These are some of the names which represent actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is Al-Khaliq, the creator. Creating is an action. Al-Muhyi, He is the one who gives life. Giving life is an action. Al-Mumit, taking life, this is an action. Al-Razzaq, the one who provides, gives rizq, this is an action. So the word Al-Qayyum, the word Al-Hayy represents all those attributes that belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His essence. And the word Al-Qayyum relate to all of those names and attributes that relate to His creation and His actions that relate to His creation. The act of creating, the act of providing, the act of giving life, the act of taking life, the act of saving, rescuing someone from hardship, the act of curing someone from an illness, healing someone from an illness. All of these are the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that relate to His creation, and they also come under the name Al-Qayyum. So this word, this name, it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Qayyum, He is free of need from all of His creation. He is free of need from all of His creation because He is Al-Ghani. And as for all of the existing things, He is the one who brought them into existence. He is the one who causes them to remain in existence. He is the one who extended to all of these things everything that they need to exist and to remain. So this is the name Al-Qayyum, Al-Qayyum. So from this, Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum, we see that they are from the greatest names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And together, Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum, they likewise bring together all of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we began with Allah, which indicates all of the names of Allah. And after this we come to Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum, which together indicate all of the names of Allah, those which indicate the attributes of the essence, and those which indicate the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Then after this he said, لا تأخذه سنة لا تأخذه سنة. And the Shaykh says, أي نعاس. That this means that weariness, being weary, slumber, this does not overtake him. ولا نوم, which means sleep. And these two things which Allah has negated from Himself, they follow after these two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum. So on the one hand, He affirmed His perfect life and the perfection in His attributes and His actions that relate to the creation and maintaining the creation. And in order to remove the shubha, to remove any doubt that might come into the mind of a person, that all of this creation and the heavens and the earth and maintaining it, would not one be tired and weary? And so to remove that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, لَا تَأْخُذُهُ سِنَةٌ وَلَا نَوْمٌ. And this we find is the way of the Quran. And this in fact informs us of another principle at this point, which is that when we speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we find in the Quran, Allah affirms for Himself. He will affirm for Himself certain names or attributes. So we affirm those names and attributes. And these names and attributes will be mentioned in a specific sense, in a very specific sense. Therefore, hence we see in the Quran, Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Malik or Malik, Al-Quddus, As-Salam, all of these specific names, and Al-Ilm, and Al-Qudra, and all of the attributes. And when a person hears these names, and he hears these attributes, and he thinks of their meanings, then you find that love in his heart develops for the one who is described in such a way. And likewise we see the second thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He denies from Himself in a general sense. He denies from Himself in a general sense. So for example, Allah says in Surah Ikhlas, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. There is no equal for Allah. There's no equal. This is a general negation. Likewise He said, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Do not make for Allah any rivals whilst you have knowledge. He negated rivals in a general sense. Likewise He said, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is none which is a likeness to Him. And likewise He said, هَلْ تَعْلَمُ لَهُ سَمِيًّا. Do you know of one who deserves a name like Allah's, the one who deserves to be named as Allah is named? And the answer is no. All of these are general denials, general negations, that nothing is like Allah, nothing is a likeness to Allah. This is the second thing that we find. Then we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He negates specific things where there is a reason. So for example, the Nasara, the Christians say that Allah has a son. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He denies that He has a son in the Quran. And likewise the Jews say that Allah's hands are tied, meaning to say that He is miserly. And Allah denies that His hands are tied. And likewise, we find that in this example here, where a person might wrongly presume that this vast creation, the heavens and the earth, its creation and its maintenance, would not one become tired and weary, that presumption and that false thought is removed. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. And so from this we understand a general principle from this ayah, from Ayatul Kursi itself, and which the scholars derive that this is what we find in the Quran in general. This is our method, that we affirm for Allah names and attributes in a specific sense. Allah affirms a name, attribute, we affirm it. We deny things for Allah in a general sense. This is a general principle. And in limited situations or in limited things, we will negate from Allah specific things because a reason demands from us to negate those things. Allah does not have a son. Allah, His hands are not tied. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is not overtaken by sleep or slumber. Allah does not oppress. He does not fall into dhulm. All of these things are like that. And in this, our method and our way is different to the people of misguidance who turn the scales the other way around. And they say, like those who deny Allah's attributes, they say, well, we don't affirm attributes for Allah, rather we say Allah is not blind, Allah is not deaf, Allah is not ignorant, Allah is not dead. So instead of affirming life, they say, we don't say Allah is dead, Allah is not dead. Instead of affirming ilm, knowledge, we say Allah is not ignorant. Instead of affirming hearing, they say Allah is not deaf. Instead of affirming Allah's sight, they say Allah is not blind. And this is the way of the Jahmiyyah and other than them. And as the scholars point out, then how can this be a praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When you say Allah is Al-Alim, Al-Hayy, As-Sami', Al-Basir. Those names and the attributes, they come into your heart. And your heart develops love for the one who is so described. But when you start hearing, He's not ignorant, He's not blind, He's not deaf, He's not dead. How is this bringing praise? How is this praising the one you are describing? This is futile. And so this is a way in which this methodology differs with the way of the people of Batil, people of Kalam, from the Jahmiyyah and whoever followed in their way. So he says, وَلَا نَوْمٍ, because as-sinah, لِأَنَّ السِّنَةَ وَالنَّوْمِ, because this slumber and sleep, they are things which occur to the creation. This is what we do. And it indicates al-dha'f, wal-ajaz, wal-inhilal, because it represents a weakness, an inability on our behalf. And the fact that that over time that we become weak and we expire. But as for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has azmah, He has might and kibriya, greatness and pride and jalal and loftiness, then these things do not approach, they do not come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's free of all of that. So then he said, after this, so we have لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. So we have Allah, the name of Allah, لا إله إلا هو, the kalima of Tawheed, Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, two of the greatest names of Allah, and then لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم, a negation of these defects. Then after this he moves into له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens and the earth. And so this is an indication, the Shaykh says, وَأَخْبَرَ أَنَّهُ مَالِكْ جَمِيعِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ فَكُلُّهُمْ عَبِيدٌ لِلَّهِ مَمَالِيكٌ. He says, he informed here that he is the owner and the master of everything which is in the heavens and the earth. And all of them are slaves to Allah. They are slaves, they are under His servitude. And not a single one of them comes out of this situation that they are in. Then the Shaykh mentions an ayah in the Quran. He says, Allah says, إِن كُلُّ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِلَّا آتِ الرَّحْمَنِ عَبْدًا. That there is none which is in the heavens and the earth except that it comes to Ar-Rahman as a slave. And then he says, فَهُوَ الْمَالِكِ لِجَمِيعِ الْمَمَالِيكِ. He is the master and the owner of every single thing which is under his servitude. وَهُوَ الَّذِي لَهُ صِفَاتِ الْمُلْكِ وَالتَّصَرُّفِ وَالسُّلْطَانِ وَالْكِبْرِيَاءِ. That he is the one that has all of the attributes that relate to the fact that he owns everything, his mulk, his dominion, his tasarruf, meaning that the fact that he deals with his creation, how he behaves with his creation, the attributes like those we mentioned earlier on, that he creates, that he provides, he gives life, takes life, that he honors whomever he wills, and he humiliates whomever he wills. He guides whomever he wills and he misguides whomever he wills. All of this is from the tasarruf, from how Allah deals and interacts with His creation by way of His actions. Likewise, this mulk indicates His sultan, His ownership, and His kibriya, meaning His pride and His might. So all of this is indicated by His statement, Lahu mulku samawati wal ard. Then he said straight after, so here we have the issue of Allah's dominion, al-mulk, mentioned in this great ayah. Then after this he said, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. Who is there who can intercede with Him except after His permission? Who is there who can intercede with Him except after His permission? What is the connection between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning his mulk, lahu mulku samawati wal ard, and between him mentioning and him denying that anyone can come and intercede with him except after his permission. The Shaykh indicates here, وَمِن تَمَامِ مُلْكِهِ وَمِن تَمَامِ مُلْكِهِ أَنَّهُ لَا يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. So the fact that Allah negated that anyone can intercede with him, this is a perfection of the meaning of his mulk. It is a perfection of the meaning of Allah's mulk. And to understand this fully, we can go to another ayah in the Quran. This ayah is in Surah Saba, the 34th surah in the Quran, verse number 22. And Ibn al-Qayyim has a good commentary on this ayah, and it helps us to explain what is the intent here in this ayah, in Ayatul Kursi. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, قُلِ ادْعُوا الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Allah says, say to them, O Muhammad, call upon those whom you claim who are besides Allah. Call upon them, those whom you claim who are deities besides Allah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the rest of the ayah, He mentions 4 levels. Allah denies and negates 4 things in succession. So the first thing He denies, He says, لا يملكون مثقال ذرة في السماوات ولا في الأرض. So He's saying those whom you call upon, they don't own not even an atom, the weight of an atom in the heavens and nor in the earth. So the first thing which Allah has negated from anyone besides Him is mulk. Mulk. This is the denial that anyone besides Him actually owns anything from the creation. Why is this? Because those who call upon other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they might worship those others because they might believe one of 4 things about them. And these 4 things might be the justification why they worship others besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this ayah, Allah is negating each of these 4 levels in succession. The first thing which is denied is that those whom you call upon besides Allah, they don't own even an atom's weight in the heavens and the earth. Meaning, how then can you call upon these people? How then can you call upon these people? So mulk is denied at the first level. So the first asal of shirk, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, the first root and foundation of shirk is cut off at this point. Then he says, وَمَا لَهُمْ فِيهِمَا مِنْ شِرْكٍ. وَمَا لَهُمْ فِيهِمَا مِنْ شِرْكٍ. And nor do they, meaning those whom you call upon, they don't have any share in owning anything from the heavens and the earth. So now, because you got to think of the beauty of this ayah, because if we have denied that someone owns something in the creation of the heavens and the earth, it might be the case that they share with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with something in the heavens and the earth. So independent ownership is negated in the first part of the ayah. But it might be the case that someone might believe that they share with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in owning something from the heavens and the earth. And this is what we find. We find that in the shirk of many a nation which have passed or which might exist now, they believe that those deities that they worship alongside Allah, or some of them might say the planets, or some of them might say the angels, that they share in owning parts of the creation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so therefore worship of them is justified on that basis. And so here in the second part of that ayah, Allah has nullified that second foundation and basis of shirk. And this is having any share. So al-mulk is denied completely. Al-mulk is denied. Secondly, al-musharaka. Al-musharaka, sharing with someone else, that is denied and negated as well. So there goes a second foundation and a second basis, which is used by the mushrikeen to worship other than Allah. Then he said, وَمَا لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ ظَهِيرٍ وَمَا لَهُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ ظَهِيرٍ. And nor does he, meaning Allah, have from amongst them, meaning those worshipped besides Allah, any helper, any dhahir, any helper or aider. If we deny the first two, if we deny that anyone owns something independently from the creation, and if we deny that anyone shares with Allah in owning something from the creation, then the third level might be that maybe there are things or creatures or beings that help and support Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the running of His creation. Okay, they don't own anything, but they may be helping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this again we find in the shirk of many nations. They believe that the angels aid and support Allah, as in Allah needs them to run His creation. Or the planets have this role, or other things like this. And likewise the mushrikeen who say that the awliya of Allah, they aid Allah in the running of His creation. Or the mushriks from the Rafidah who believe that their awliya, their saints, their imams, they control something from the creation, have tasarruf, or they may aid Allah in that. All of this is another foundation of shirk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cut off the root of that as well. That argument is cut off, that Allah does not have any dhahir, anyone to support Him or aid Him. Then He said in the next ayah, verse number 23, He said, وَلَا تَنْفَعُ الشَّفَاعَةُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَذِنَ لَهُ. Which means, and likewise no intercession will benefit with Him except for the one to whom He has granted permission. This now is the fourth level, the final level, because it might be the case that, okay, a person doesn't own anything, he doesn't share anything in that ownership, nor does he support, be a dhahir, aid in the running. But the fourth level is maybe that he has a position by which he can convince the one who is the owner. Like for example, someone who goes to a king, a minister goes to a king and he intercedes. The minister does not have any ownership. He does not share with the king in running the country. He does not even, he's not really an aider or a helper, but he can affect him in his opinion. So he goes to the king and he tries to intercede on behalf of other people. This still is a type of influence. It is a type of influence that can exist for someone besides the king. And so here in this ayah, Allah has denied that anyone can intercede except after His permission, except after He has permitted. This shows the completeness of the dominion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that no one has any tasarruf, no one has any say, no one has any qawl except by Him and except after His permission. All of this shows the complete dominion belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when we look at this ayah in Surah Saba, and then we come back to this, to Ayatul Kursi, and we see that He said, لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. To Him belong the heavens and the earth. He has denied the mulk from everyone besides Him. Then He went to the lowest level of influence that those besides Him might claim to have the right to make intercession, and He's denied that as well. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. Who is there that can intercede with Him except after His permission? And this, as the Shaykh says, وَمِن تَمَامِ مُلْكِهِ أَنَّهُ لَا يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. So this means that every person who intercedes, every person who comes and tries to influence, he says, فَكُلُّ الْوُجَهَاءِ وَالشُّفَعَاءِ عَبِيدٌ لَهُ مَمَالِيكٌ لَا يُقَدِّمُونَ عَلَى شَفَاعَةٍ حَتَّى يَأْذَنَ لَهُمْ. That all of them are slaves to Him, in bondage to Him, slaves to Him, and they do not proceed into intercession until He gives them permission to do so. And then the Shaykh mentions another ayah in which we see the same connection again. In this ayah, Allah says, قُلْ لِلَّهِ الشَّفَاعَةُ جَمِيعًا. Say to Allah belongs all of intercession. لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. To Him belong the heavens and the earth. So ash-shafa'ah, and then to Him belongs the right of shafa'ah. And then He said after this, to Him belongs the mulk, the dominion of the heavens and the earth. Then He said, وَاللَّهُ لَا يَأْذَنُ لِأَحَدٍ أَن يَشْفَعَ إِلَّا فِي مَنِ ارْتَضَى وَلَا يَرْتَضَى إِلَّا تَوْحِيدَهُ وَاتِّبَاعَ رُسُلِهِ. And then He says, Allah will not give anyone permission to intercede. No one will be allowed to come and intercede with Allah except for the one with whom Allah is pleased, for the person with whom Allah is pleased. And likewise, except after He has granted His permission. And Allah is not pleased except with Tawheed. Tawheed, and except with obedience and following His messengers. So if you are someone who worships Allah alone, and you are someone who makes ittiba of His messengers, but you are sinful and neglectful, and you fell into major sins, you were neglectful in your salah, and in your siyam, and your fasting, and your zakah, and your hajj, and you neglected the obligations, and you died upon that without tawbah, but you died upon Tawheed, then Allah will be pleased with you because you have Tawheed. And the prophets, and the angels, and the righteous believers will be given permission by Allah, only after Allah's permission, to intercede on your behalf. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. And then He says, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَتَّصِفْ بِهَذَا فَلَيْسَ لَهُ فِي الشَّفَاعَةِ نَصِيبٌ. And anyone who is not described in this manner, he is not a person of Tawheed, he does not make ittiba of the messengers, then he will not have any share of the intercession. Then after this He said, ثم أخبر عن علمه الواسع المحيط وأنه يعلم ما بين أيدي الخلائق من الأمور المستقبلة التي لا نهاية لها. So He said, يعلم ما بين أيديهم. يعلم ما بين أيديهم. He knows that which is in front of them, meaning the affairs of the future. And then He said also, after that, وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. And that which is behind them, which means those affairs which have passed. And what does this mean? The Shaykh says, ثم أخبر عن علمه الواسع المحيط. He then informed us about His all-encompassing knowledge. So here we are now moving to Allah's ilm, to Allah's knowledge. يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. Then He said, وَأَنَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِي الْخَلَائِقِ مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الْمُسْتَقْبَلَةِ. So He knows all of the affairs that are yet to come. And likewise, الَّتِي لَا نِهَايَةَ لَهَا. Those affairs which have no end. There's no end to these things in the future. And likewise, وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. That which is behind them, مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الْمَاضِيَةِ. Those affairs which have passed, الَّتِي لَا حَدَّ لَهَا. Those which have no limit. And here Imam al-Sa'di has pointed to, very subtly, to an important issue here. What he's pointed to here is a refutation of the people of Kalam, the Ilmul Kalam, from the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila and the Ash'aris. Because what we believe as people of the Sunnah is we believe that Allah's existence is eternal. He has always existed. He's uncreated, He's always existed. And so therefore, He has existed with all of His names. He's existed with all of His names. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always been Al-Khallaq, the one who creates. He's always been Ar-Razzaq, the one who provides. Al-Ghaffar, the one who forgives. And if Allah has existed for eternity, this means His attributes are eternal with Him as well. And likewise, Allah is one who acts. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيد. Allah is one who does whatever He wishes. Allah has a will and He chooses to act. So if Allah is eternal and His attributes are eternal, and He chooses and wishes to act, it means that His actions are eternal. And likewise, He's one who speaks. He chooses to speak whenever He wills, with whatever He wills. It means His speech is eternal. And that means that Allah is eternally one who acts and speaks in the past. And likewise, Allah is eternally one who speaks and acts in the future. And this is what we believe about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is different to the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila and the Ash'aris and Maturidis. They say it is impossible for us to go backwards in eternity, and Allah is speaking and Allah is acting. And likewise, some of them say in the future, all events will come to an end, paradise will stop, hellfire will stop, the people's emotions will stop, everything will freeze. This is from the sayings of the Jahmiyyah. And this is batil, this is false. Rather, we believe here, as is indicated in this speech, that Allah has knowledge of all future affairs to which there is no end. Why? Because Allah's existence is eternal, His speech is eternal, His act of His actions, His attributes are eternal. So in the future, Allah will always be speaking, acting, creating, providing. And that's why for the people of paradise, we find in the Quran, Allah mentions, there will be no end to the reward of the people of paradise. It is eternally in the future. So therefore Allah will eternally be giving rizq to the people in paradise. And this shows the eternality of Allah's actions in the future. And likewise His speech. And likewise we believe likewise in that which has passed. So here He said, يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. And then He continues, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. And inshallah ta'ala we will end our lesson here for today, and we will continue the remainder of this lesson in the remainder of this explanation in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. So from this we take some great and important mighty affairs from the Tawheed of Allah, the names of Allah, Al-Hayyul Qayyum, two of the greatest names of Allah, negating from Him deficiencies, His perfect mulk, His mulk and His dominion, the completion of which is that no one is allowed to speak or intercede except after His permission. And then His perfect knowledge, His ilm of all future events and of all past events, and what this indicates of meanings and refutations of the people of Kalam and other than them. All of these are great things that when a person thinks and reflects about these things, then it is something that inculcates that iman into his heart. And that's why we see the virtues, as we shall see inshallah ta'ala in the next lesson, the great virtues mentioned about Ayatul Kursi and the great protection that Ayatul Kursi affords to the person who recites it in the night time and after the salawat. So with that we conclude our lesson. Defects. And likewise there is the issue of Allah's mulk and the shafa'ah, and also Allah's all-encompassing knowledge, His ilm, and likewise the kursi, which indicates the arsh and the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this ayah contains many great affairs. And so we went through the commentary of Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, and we got to the statement, يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. So inshallah we'll continue from that point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. And so the Shaykh said, we mentioned this in the previous lesson, that here this means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows all of the affairs of the future, the umur mustaqbala, those affairs which are to come in the future. And likewise, وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ, all of the affairs in the past. And He said, which have no limit. الَّتِي لَا حَدَّ لَهَا. So the affairs of the past, they have no limit. And we mentioned in the previous lesson that we believe as people of the Sunnah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is eternal, His names are eternal, His attributes are eternal. And because Allah is the one who acts and He speaks, because He has a mashi'ah, He has an irada, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in eternity, without beginning, that He is one who speaks, one who acts. Which means that the events in the past, the events which can take place in the past are eternal. There is no limit to the events that can take place in the past. Because Allah is eternal, His attributes are eternal, He is one who wills, He has irada, He has mashi'ah, which means in eternity He has been speaking and acting. Which means that there are events which can take place in eternity. And this is something that the mind cannot really understand. We can't, it's something that's hard for the mind to understand and grasp. How can there be eternal events in the past? And so this issue that the Shaykh alluded to here when he said, وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الْمَاضِيَّةِ الَّتِي لَا حَدَّ لَهَا, from the affairs of the past which have no limit. And this is a crucial point because this is where we differ with the Jahmiyyah. Because the Jahmiyyah, the foundation of their bid'ah is built upon this point, that they believe events in the past are impossible. They say it is impossible for there to be events going in eternity, meaning there's an event, then an event before it, then an event before it, in eternity going all the way back. They say that's impossible. And the reason why they say that's impossible is because they wanted to prove to the atheists, they wanted to use an argument to prove to the atheists that there is a creator. And so they brought this principle which clashes with the Quran, clashes with the Sunnah, clashes with what the Imams of the Salaf were agreed upon. And that's why Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, when he refuted the Jahmiyyah on the issue of the kalam, he said, "Lam yazil mutakalliman idha sha." That Allah has never ceased to be one who speaks whenever He wills. Lam yazil mutakalliman means Allah has never ceased in eternity to be one who speaks. Which means His speech, there is no end to His speech. Allah's always been one who speaks. So this is where we differ with the Jahmiyyah and all of the subgroups of the Jahmiyyah. Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, the Kullabiyya, the Ash'aris, the Maturidis, the Karramiyya, the Salimiyya, likewise the Rafida, groups of Kalam from the Rafida, the Hishamiyya. Every single one of these groups, when they built their Aqeedah, they built it upon this principle. This principle is that it is impossible to have events in the past going back in eternity. So this is incorrect. Rather, we believe that Allah is eternal, His attributes are eternal, therefore His actions are eternal in the past, His speech and His action. And so this really is the foundation of the deen of the Jahmiyyah. As Ibn Taymiyyah mentions in many of his books, that one of their greatest foundations is imtina' al-hawadith la awwala laha, which means the impossibility of events which do not have a beginning. So the Shaykh alluded to this point when he said allati la hadda laha, and we've also mentioned in some of the previous lessons that there are people present today, from those who ascribe to Islam, from those who ascribe to the da'wah, and who might even ascribe to the way of the Salaf, and they go and they debate with the non-Muslims, with the atheists, and they use the arguments of the Jahmiyyah. They use the arguments of the Jahmiyyah. People like, you've heard these names, Hamza Tzotsis, and many of the Muqallida who follow him. You find them now appearing on YouTube, giving debates and arguments. There are 3 or 4 people who follow him, all of them parroting the same stuff. And this is not correct. So the Shaykh alluded to this when he said, وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الْمَاضِيَةِ الَّتِي لَا حَدَّ لَهَا. Then he said, he mentioned also the ayah, يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. That this indicates the perfect ilm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there is nothing hidden from Him, from the people, that He knows the deception of the eye and He knows what the chests do contain, what the chests do conceal. So nothing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So As-Sa'di, he says, وَأَنَّ الْخَلْقَ, that the creation, لَا يُحِيطُ أَحَدٌ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِ اللَّهِ وَمَعْلُومَاتِهِ. That as for the creation, there's no one from the creation who can encompass the ilm of Allah and that which is known, that which is to be known from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not possible for anyone from the creation to know that. What did he say next? إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. So, an exception has been made that only the creation only knows that which Allah allows them and wills them to know. إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. Then he said, وَهُوَ مَا أَطْلَعَهُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الشَّرْعِيَّةِ وَالْقَدَرِيَّةِ. So the creation do not know nothing except what Allah wills that they should know. And that is in terms of the Sharia, and likewise the affairs which are Shar'iyya and Qadariyya. That means that whatever Allah reveals to His creation from the affair, from the revelation, from wahi. And so therefore they come to know of the names and attributes of Allah and His angels and the jinn and the affairs of the unseen, paradise, hellfire, what is in the grave, what is to come on Yawm al-Qiyamah. All of these are from the affairs of the unseen. And Allah reveals to His messengers and prophets, and through that the people come to know things which they have no way of knowing. And likewise the affairs of the Shar'iyya, the Ahkam, the Ibadat, the affairs of rulings and worship and so on and so forth. All of this is something that Allah reveals and allows His creation to come to know because they have to worship Him. And then He said, wal qadariyya, al-umur al-shar'iyya wal qadariyya, the affairs that relate to al-qadar, meaning the way that Allah has created His creation. He has put asbab, He's put ways and means in the creation so that people study these affairs and they come to have a working knowledge, of the creation. And through that knowledge, they are able to use that knowledge for the benefit, for the worldly benefit. So Allah allows mankind to have this knowledge, the affairs of the affairs which are Shar'iyya and Qadariyya. However, all of this ilm that mankind has, he says, وَهُوَ جُزْءٌ يَسِيرٌ جِدًّا مُدْمَحِلٌ فِي عُلُومِ الْبَارِ وَمَعْلُومَاتِهِ. So all of this ilm, all of this knowledge that mankind has, either by way of revelation and the legislations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or by way of what they study of the world from the affairs which are qadariyya, the affairs, the asbab, the kawniyya, al-qadariyya, the affairs as to how the creation works and operates. This ilm is only a very tiny portion which actually becomes insignificant. It disappears when compared to the ilm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the various knowledge, the types of knowledge that are possessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Creator. Then he said, كما قال, as he said, كما قال أعلم الخلق به, as has been said by the most knowledgeable of the creation about Allah, وهم الرسل والملائكة. So the most knowledgeable of the creation, and they are the messengers and the angels. They said, then he quotes another ayah in the Quran. They said, Subhanaka, la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. This is the saying of the angels. They said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorified be you. We have no knowledge except that which you have taught us. So the knowledge possessed by the angels and the creation is only a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. And it is the knowledge which came from Allah in the first place. Because mankind is zaloom, he's oppressive, he's jahul, he's ignorant. This is his nature. And so then Allah revealed to him from that ilm, as a result of which that jahl, something of that jahl was removed. But otherwise, all of that ilm itself, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he goes on to say, As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, because at the end of the ayah, وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So after saying إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ, he says وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. That his kursi extends, or it encompasses, the heavens and the earth. So he says وَأَنَّ كُرْسِيَّهُ وَسِعَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَأَنَّهُ قَدْ حَفِظَهُمَا وَمَنْ فِيهِمَا مِنَ الْعَوَالِمِ بِالْأَسْبَابِ وَالنِّظَامَاتِ. Then he says that his kursi, which is the footstool, encompasses the heavens and the earth. And he mentioned that he is the one who preserves them. He's the one who preserves them. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا. And whoever is within them, from the awalim, from all of the different worlds, meaning the world of men, the world of jinn, the world of creatures, the world of the angels, and those which we don't know of, that Allah is the one who maintains all of them. And he does so bil-asbab wan-nizamat. Bil-asbab wan-nizamat. This means that in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has put asbab. There are asbab, meaning ways and means. So as an example, I drink this water and it removes my thirst. We eat the food and the food is a means of our preservation. Or for example, and the asbab, there are so many asbab in the creation that we can't really understand. Some of them we know Allah tells us of them in the Quran, the night and the day, the alternation of the night and the day, the sun, the moon, and how the sun, provides light, and all of these things. Allah mentions some of them in the book, and likewise in the Sunnah. But the asbab, we see that in the creation things run by way of asbab. Here is another important point of our aqidah, which is that we differ from the Ash'ariyah, the Ash'aris, who say, for example, they don't believe in the asbab. They don't believe in the ways and means. They believe, for example, they say, for example, that if I was to drink this water, it is not the water that removes my thirst. Rather, Allah creates the feeling of thirst at the same time that I drink the water. In other words, the water doesn't have any qualities that cause me for my thirst to be removed. This is batil, this is false. This is the aqidah of the Ash'ariyah. They deny the asbab because they believe wrongly that to ascribe any qualities, any properties to things, that it is shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is from their mistakes. But we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created things, He has put properties in things, and those properties have effects. Yet the creator of all of that, the thing itself, the water, likewise the properties of water, Allah created all of them. And there's no contradiction when we say, for example, that the water quenched my thirst. The water quenched my thirst. This is correct, because the water has been given those qualities and properties by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is nothing wrong with saying, for example, this water quenched my thirst, or this medicine or this pill, it removed my pain, or it removed my headache, because all things have been given qualities and properties by which Allah brings about their effects. And this is how the creation works. The creation, there are asbab in the creation. And also, see, this is the great danger. When we don't understand these affairs in the right way, we allow the enemies of Islam to come and to basically laugh and mock the Muslimin. And that's why when you look at the view of the Ash'aris, they deny the causes and the means, they deny the asbab wal musabbabat, the causes and the effects, and they believe that at every instance Allah is creating everything in every second afresh. This is one of the consequences of their belief. They believe right now that the color you are seeing on this table, this is being created every trillionth of a second as we speak. Right? This is from the evil consequences of their belief, which they founded upon ilmul kalam. That it is continuous, perpetual creation, continuously all the time. And this is from what was said by Ibn Kullab, and he was followed by Al-Ash'ari. Why did they say this? Look at this. This is how when a people don't stick to the Quran and the Sunnah, and they use the aql, it leads them to misguidance. Why did they say this? They said it because when they were trying to argue with the Mu'tazila don't believe Allah has attributes. They say Allah cannot have attributes. So, what Ibn Qullab, what they said was, well, the reason why you say Allah can't have attributes is because it means that the attributes of Allah, you can't have something which is eternal with Allah. You can't have Allah, then eternal attributes. So this is what the Mu'tazila were arguing with the Kullabiyah. So then Ibn Kullab, he tried to make a distinction between the attributes in the creation and the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wanted to make a distinction between the attributes we find in the creation, my attributes, your attributes, the attributes of things, and the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said that the attributes of Allah are eternal. They are eternal. But as for the attributes that we see, that are present amongst us, they are being constantly recreated all the time. Every second, every trillionth of a second. So our attributes are not eternal. They cannot be eternal. They're continuously perishing and being recreated, right? So right now, as you are looking at this piece of paper, and you can see that the piece of paper is white, that white attribute of this paper you are seeing right now, every trillionth of a second, it's being recreated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As are you and all of your attributes. This is what they actually believe. And they believe this because they want to make a distinction between the attributes in the creation, which they are saying that are always come to be and perish, come to be and perish, come to be and perish. So they can't be eternal, whereas Allah's attributes are eternal. So therefore now we've proven that if we affirm attributes for Allah, then there's no problem with this, because His attributes are eternal and ours are just simply temporary. A'rad. This is what they say. Right? So you can see how when a person does not hold fast to the Quran and the Sunnah and they jump to their intellects, they will go far astray. So the Shaykh said here that Allah preserves the whole of the creation, the heavens, the earth, whatever is within the earth, heavens and the earth, min al-awalim bil asbab wan nizamat. Bil asbab wan nizamat. So we believe that in this creation there are causes, ways and means. There are asbab. And that there are nizamat. That there are things that Allah has put, that hold the universe. There are forces, there are powers, there are things of that nature by which the creation is how it is. And likewise, there are things that we cannot see. There are angels that are in control of certain, phenomena, like the rain or the mountains or the lightning or whatever else. We believe in all of these things. And this means that because we believe in the asbab, because we believe in the nizamat, we have an asl, a foundation for studying the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't have any conflict between, between what the kuffar and the atheists, they presume and they think there's a conflict between the sharia on the one hand and the affairs that are from Allah's qadr on the other hand. There's no conflict. We don't have that conflict because we believe in the asbab. But the Ash'aris, and people like them, they don't believe in the asbab. Also, this is another issue that is alluded to here. So then the Shaykh says, وَمَنْ فِيهِمَا مِنَ الْعَوَالِمِ بِالْأَسْبَابِ وَالنِّظَامَاتِ التي جعلها الله في المخلوقات ومع ذلك he says ومع ذلك ولا يؤوده أي يثقله حفظهما. So alongside all of this, alongside the fact that Allah has created the whole of the creation, He preserves them, whatever is within them of the different types of worlds, the world of men, the world of jinn, the world of animals, and everything else that we don't know of. He preserves all of that. He's created asbab, He's created nizamat, He's put them all in the creation. None of that tires Him or wearies Him or is burdensome to Him. وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا لِكَمَالِ عَظْمَتِهِ وَاقْتِدَارِهِ وَسِعَةِ حِكْمَتِهِ فِي أَحْكَامِهِ. So he said, this is because of the perfection in His azmah. Allah is perfect in His might and in His powers and in His wisdom, which is vast. The wisdom of Allah is vast in His rulings, in His judgments. And then after this, he goes on and he says in Ayatul Kursi, وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ, and He is the loftiest. And the Shaykh says, وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ بِذَاتِهِ عَلَى جَمِيعِ مَخْلُوقَاتِهِ, that He is the one who is the highest with His essence. In His essence, He is the highest above all of His creation. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ بِعَظْمَةِ صِفَاتِهِ, and He is the loftiest and the highest in terms of the greatness of His attributes. He's higher than anything else in terms of His attributes. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الَّذِي قَهَرَ الْمَخْلُوقَاتِ وَدَانَتْ لَهُ الْمَوْجُودَاتِ وَخَضَعَتْ لَهُ الصِّعَابِ وَذَلَّتْ لَهُ الرِّقَابِ. And likewise, He is Al-Ali, the highest, who has subdued and controlled all of the creation, and to whom every existing thing has lowered itself and humbled itself, and to whom every difficult thing has humbled itself, and to whom the necks have lowered themselves too. So notice here that As-Sa'di, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned that when we believe in the name of Allah, Al-Ali, Allah is the highest. He's the highest in three different ways. In three different ways. First of all, Allah is the highest in terms of His actual essence. He Himself, Allah Himself in His being, in His essence, He's above all of the creation. And this first one, the first type of ulu, is what is denied by the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila and the Ash'ariyya, Maturidiyya. All of these people, they deny the ulu of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ulu of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that is clear in the Quran. There are thousands of evidences in the Quran, many evidences in the Sunnah, many statements from the Sahaba, and likewise there is an ijma', there is a consensus that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the heavens, above His throne. And we can mention a few statements here from the Imams of the Salaf. We have maybe 10 or so statements of ijma'. So these are not just a scholar from the Salaf saying that Allah is above the throne, rather it's a statement citing an ijma', citing a consensus. Imam al-Awza'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Kunna wa tabi'un mutawafirun. We used to say while the tabi'un were widespread. They were widespread. And we used to say, نَقُولْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلْ فَوْقَ عَرْشِهِ. Indeed, Allah the Mighty and Majestic is above His throne. This is a citation of ijma'. Likewise, Imam Qutaybah bin Sa'id, who died 240 Hijrah, he said, هَذَا قَوْلُ الْأَئِمَّةِ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ وَالسُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ نعرف ربنا في السماء السابعة على عرشه كما قال جل جلاله الرحمن على العرش استوى. This is the statement of the Imams in Islam and the Sunnah and the Jama'ah. So this is a quotation of ijma', of consensus, that all of the imams of the Sunnah of Islam, Sunnah and Jama'ah, this is what they say. We know our Lord to be in the seventh, above the seventh heaven, above His throne, as Allah the lofty and majestic, He said, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arshi istawa, that Ar-Rahman has ascended above the throne. Likewise, we have many of the statements from Abu Zur'a al-Razi, Abu Hatim al-Razi, Zakaria al-Saji, Ibn Battah al-Ukbari. He has in his book, he says, Babul Iman bi anna Allah ala arshihi ba'inun min khalqihi wa ilmuhu muhitun bi khalqihi. Chapter, faith that Allah is above His throne, separate from His creation. He's distinct from His creation. We believe that Allah does not dwell within His creation, and nor does His creation dwell within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, Allah's existence is outside of this creation. So we believe, he said, we believe that Allah is above His throne, separate from His creation, yet His knowledge encompasses all of the creation. Then he says, Ajma' al-Muslimun. Ajma' al-Muslimun. The Muslims are unanimously agreed. From the Sahaba, min al-Sahaba wa tabi'een, wa jami' ahli al-ilm min al-mu'mineen. From the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, and all of the people of knowledge from the believers. أن الله تبارك وتعالى على عرشه فوق سماواته بائن من خلقه وعلمه محيط بجميع خلقه. So he says that Allah, the Blessed and Exalted, is above His throne, above His heavens, separate from His creation, and His knowledge encompasses all of His creation. لا يأبى ذلك ولا ينكره إلا من انتحل مذاهب الحلولية. No one denies that or rejects it except the one who is upon the doctrines of the hululiyah. Hululiyah meaning those who believe that Allah merges in His creation, or the creation merges into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is batil, this is false. And these people, وَهُمْ قَوْمٌ زَاغَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ, there are people whose hearts deviated and shaitan beguiled them, and so they left and exited from the religion, and they said, Inna Allah dhatahu la yakhlu minhu makan. Indeed, the essence of Allah, no space, no place, is devoid of the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does this mean? This means that Allah is in every place. Na'udhu billahi min dhalik. And you see, these people, the reason why they said this is because here, in Ayatul Kursi, we are speaking about the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our Tawheed, that Allah exists outside of His creation with a real existence. He has an essence, a true and real essence. This essence has attributes. And Allah is perfect in those attributes. Whereas what these people believe, the Sufiya, people of Wahdatul Wujud, they say that to say Allah's existence and the creation's existence, this is shirk. It is shirk to believe in two existences. It is shirk to say the creator and the created. This is the saying of the people of Wahdatul Wujud. Right? So if you say there is the creator and there is the created, this is shirk. Why? Because you have made, what you've done is you've made the existence of Allah into two. You've made two existences. This is shirk to them in their twisted minds. This is shirk to them. And they say, and that's why they believe they say Wahdatul Wujud, Allah is everything and everything is Allah. There's only one existence, and that is Tawheed. Right? So this is their Tawheed. There's only one existence, everything, every attribute, every entity, every being, everything, every quality, all of that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is a manifestation of Allah's essence, His attributes. This is what they say. And this is the greatest of kufr and the greatest of shirk, to believe such a thing. And they believe this is the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what they believe. And then upon this belief, they twist the Quran They have many ta'wilat, many ta'wils of the Quran, and which are kufr. And so, but this word here, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَهُوَ الْعَلِي, that Allah is the one who is the greatest and the highest, then we believe that Allah is Ali بِذَاتِهِ, that He, with His essence, He's outside of the creation, above all of the creation. So this is denied by the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, the Ash'ariyah, the Maturidiyah. This is one of three meanings, and we believe in this meaning. The second meaning, now the other two meanings, the Ash'aris believe in those meanings. They don't dispute with us in those meanings. So we say, as they say, that Allah is the highest meaning in terms of that His qadr, His status, His rank, in His level. Like you say, for example, this is what they say. They say that Allah is above His creation, like we say that gold is above silver. You understand? Gold is above silver. How? In rank and status. That's why we have to be careful with these people. These people, the Jahmiyyah, when they come, they use these deceptive words. And they say, we believe Allah is above the creation. And we believe He's above the creation in a way better than you can ever believe. That's what they say to the people of the Sunnah. What do they mean? They mean Allah is above His creation like gold is above silver, in status, in rank, in position, in value. And this is how they come and they deceive the people. They will not come and mention their kufr openly. They will say, we believe Allah is above the creation. They will say this to the common people. You have to believe Allah is above the creation. But what do they mean by this? They mean Allah is above in the sense He's above His creation in rank, status, position, honor, might. Because they don't believe that there is a Lord above the heaven and a Lord who is above His arsh. So this is the second meaning, وَهُوَ الْعَلِي بِأَظْمَةِ صِفَاتِهِ, that He is the most high in terms of the greatness of His attributes. Allah's attributes are greater and higher than our attributes. His ilm is greater and higher and loftier than our ilm. And this is the second meaning, and the same for every other attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he said the third meaning, وَهُوَ الْعَلِي الَّذِي قَحَرَ الْمَخْلُوقَاتِ, the one who has subdued, meaning that He has power over, He has humbled, controlled and subdued all of the creation. And so every existing thing is subservient to Him, humbles itself to Him. And this is the meaning of Al-Ali, the third meaning of Al-Ali. Then he said Al-Azim, Al-Azim, the mighty. Al-Azim means the one who has gathered together all of the attributes of Al-Azmah, of greatness, Al-Kibriya, of pride, Al-Majd, which is honor, and Al-Baha, which is beauty, brilliance. And this is the Azim, Al-Azim, alladhi tuhibbuhu al-qulub. So, after we've seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describe from the beginning of Ayatul Kursi to the end of Ayatul Kursi, with all of these descriptions, Allah, His name Allah, which indicates all of the names and attributes, that there is none which has the right to be worshipped except He, Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum, then His mulk, then that the fact that the shafa'ah belongs only to Him, and then His ilm, His perfect ilm of all that is in the future, all that is in the past, and likewise the fact that the ilm of mankind is whatever He reveals to mankind, and the fact that His kursi extends over the heavens and the earth, and He's not tired by preserving them both and whatever is within them both, and He's Al-Ali Al-Azim. After all of this in Ayatul Kursi, what does it lead to? As the Shaykh says, الَّذِي تُحِبُّهُ الْقُلُوبُ. This is the one that the hearts love. وَتُعْظِمُهُ الْأَرْوَاحِ. And the souls, they venerate and they glorify this one. And those who know, the people know that any other thing besides Allah which has any greatness, then compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, compared to the greatness of Al-Ali Al-Azim, it is nothing. It dissolves and is nothing. It becomes nothing. And then he says at the end, he goes to the end, the ayah therefore has comprised all of these meanings. It has all of these meanings, and which are from the greatest and the most loftiest of meanings. And this is why it deserves to be the greatest ayah in the Quran. And this is also why the person who recites this ayah and he reflects upon its meaning and understands its meaning, his heart will certainly be filled with yaqeen. So if you recite this ayah, and as you recite this ayah, you bring to mind all of these meanings, all of these understandings, and what they comprise of these great affairs, then this person who reads it in this way, his heart will be filled with yaqeen, with certainty, with irfan, with knowledge, acquaintance, with iman. This is how the heart will be filled. And وَأَن يَكُونَ مَحْفُوظًا بِذَلِكَ مِنْ شُرُورِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And then as a result, he will be preserved from all of the evils of the shaitan. And this here the Shaykh is alluding at the very end to the fact that Ayatul Kursi is a preservation and a protection for a person from the shaitan. And this is narrated in the hadith of Al-Bukhari and others from the hadith of Abu Huraira. The well-known famous hadith when Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu was given the task of looking after the wealth of the zakat that was given in Ramadan. And as he was looking after this, then someone came to him looking for food. And so he grabbed him and said, "I will take you to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." And so he mentioned the rest of the hadith. And this being said to him that I will teach you something. And he mentioned to him that if you go to your bed and you recite Ayatul Kursi, then there will never cease to be from Allah a protector over you. And shaitan will not be able to come near to you until you reach the morning. And the Prophet said, "Sadaqaka wa huwa kadhubun dhaka shaitanun." That he told the truth, even though he is a great liar, that was shaitan. So this is a protection. So this establishes that Ayatul Kursi is a protection from the evils of the shaitan. So this brings us to the end of the speech of As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala on Ayatul